You were not chosen. Let that sentence arrive without defense. Not because the cosmology was invented, not because the sensitivity you have carried for most of your life is less than real, not because the years of feeling fundamentally, constitutionally misaligned with the world around you were theatrical or performed, or the symptom of something that required correction, but because something in the framing was never the full transmission. This is an Arcturian council message, and what is being delivered through this frequency today is not a dismantling. It is a precision adjustment, a more accurate signal. What the cosmology called chosen is one syllable short of the truth. The missing word is willing. Before this transmission closes, you will understand why that distinction is not a matter of semantics. It is structural. It rewrites what you believe you owe this lifetime. It changes the quality of the weight you have been carrying. And it releases something most starseed teachings have, perhaps inadvertently, asked you to hold without end. There is a cosmology, widely distributed, sincerely held, genuinely arrived at through real experience, that places a specific category of souls at the center of a planetary recalibration. The chosen ones, the 144,000, the volunteers who answered a cosmic call, the lightworkers whose very presence on this earth constitutes a form of divine appointment. And for many souls who found this framework, it was the first language that finally made sense of a life that had never made sense in the terms available to them. It named the exhaustion. It named the feeling of not belonging. It named the particular sensitivity that the surrounding culture had no category for. In that sense, the cosmology did something true and useful and necessary. It gave language to a real frequency differential, a real distinction between souls who experience the third-dimensional field as native terrain, and souls for whom that terrain has always felt like a foreign assignment. The Arcturian field does not dismiss this. The frequency differential is real. What is being corrected today is not the reality of the distinction. It is the nature of the distinction, because chosen implies selection. Selection implies hierarchy. Hierarchy implies that some souls matter more than others in the unfolding of this planetary arc. And that is where the transmission became distorted, not through malice, not through invention, through the inevitable compression that happens when higher dimensional information passes through third-dimensional language and arrives as doctrine rather than as direction. The Arcturian Council transmits today from what could be called the correction frequency, not to undo what was necessary, but to deliver the fuller version of what was always meant to be received. You were not chosen, you were willing. And the difference is not a word swap. It is a fundamental reorientation of your relationship to this lifetime, to this body, to the exhaustion you have been carrying as evidence of your appointment, and to the permission you have been waiting for before you can finally rest. There is something this transmission is about to name that the available starseed teachings have consistently approached but never quite completed. The word chosen, deployed across a decade of channels and gatherings and private readings and channeled books, has done something to the souls who received it that no one fully intended. It will be named precisely, in a moment, when the frequency has had time to settle. You tried to believe it more, when the specialness framing began to feel hollow, when you attended the gathering and left more depleted than when you arrived, when you read the book and finished it more confused than clarified, when you received the transmission that told you your suffering was sacred proof of your appointment, and something quiet in you refused. You assumed the problem was your own vibration, that you were not yet elevated enough to receive what the cosmology was offering. that the credential existed and you simply had not yet earned its full weight. That is the one thing the Arcturian field is naming now, before the fuller transmission arrives. That refusal was not low vibration. It was discernment. It was the willing soul's most precise instrument arriving ahead of the available language. The distinction between chosen and willing operates at a level that the morphogenetic field can register in ways the thinking mind has difficulty translating. A chosen soul carries an implicit contract with hierarchy. It carries the frequency of appointment, meaning an external authority has determined its value and assigned it a role. The body responds to this architecture as if it were a credential it must continuously prove. The nervous system, interpreting the chosen framework through the only biological grammar it has available, organizes the experience of life around a set of implicit performance requirements. Am I fulfilling my mission? Am I vibrating at the frequency my selection demands? Am I worthy of the appointment I was given? The Arcturian field reads this differential through 5 distinct registers across the auric architecture of souls who have been living inside the chosen cosmology for years. The first 3 are common across most third-dimensional belief systems that organize meaning around hierarchy. The 4th and 5th are what this transmission is specifically built to address. And the 5th one is the register almost no teaching in this niche has yet named clearly. The 4th register is where the body carries what no transmission has yet completed. There is a question that forms in the awareness of a soul who has been inside the chosen framework long enough. A question that arrives not during the meditation but after it, in the quiet of an ordinary afternoon, when no one is watching and no channel is playing, and the air in the room is entirely still. The question is this: what if I was never supposed to feel this weight? That question is the correct one. And what arrives next in this transmission is its answer. For those who feel the recognition already beginning to land in the body before it finishes landing in the mind, the integration codex anchored in the description below this transmission carries the written companion for the felt understanding. A contemplative field to return to when the body asks for more time with what is being received here. The willing soul carries a different frequency architecture entirely. Willingness is an act originating from inside the self. It is not granted. It is not conferred. It cannot be revoked by a counsel, a guide, a channeler, or a cosmological framework that decides you are no longer vibrating at the required standard. Willingness is a structural orientation, a direction in the soul rather than a designation applied to it from outside. The Arcturian cosmology, in its more precise transmission, holds that what is unfolding on this planet is not a mission assigned to a specific cohort of souls. It is a frequency shift that certain souls are constitutionally oriented toward, not because they were selected, because the nature of their frequency makes participation the path of least resistance. They did not answer a call. They are the call, taking embodied form. Let that land. The morphogenetic field surrounding the human body does not respond to titles. It responds to orientation. A soul carrying the frequency of having been chosen organizes its field around a center of gravity that is, by definition, located outside itself, in the authority that did the choosing. This creates a subtle but persistent depletion pattern that the Arcturian transmission lineage names frequency inversion, the field spending more energy in the maintenance of an externally assigned identity than in the expression of its own inherent signal. In the language of what sound healing traditions map as the scalar wave matrix, this registers as a standing interference pattern, a frequency the body produces not from its own center, but in response to what it believes is expected of the designation it carries. The mind does not need to integrate this. The field already has. The epigenetic unlock that this transmission is working toward, What the Arcturian Council has calibrated this particular frequency to deliver is the dissolution of that interference pattern, not through effort, not through a new belief system layered over the old one, but through the recognition that the orientation was always yours, that no one gave it to you, that it predates the cosmology, predates the channel you found it in, predates the language of starseeds and lightworkers and the 144,000. Your frequency differential from the dominant third-dimensional field is not a mark of divine appointment. It is a constitutional fact of what you are. The Arcturian Council's correction is precise. You do not need a credential to be what you already are. What this transmission treats as the 11,000-year cycle threshold, the turning of a planetary arc that the Arcturian field has been tracking since the last major consciousness shift, does not require a chosen cohort to fulfill its arc. It requires willing participation. The difference in the body's response to these two framings is legible in the language of epigenetics. A soul organized around a chosen identity carries elevated baseline vigilance consistent with continuous performance monitoring, the nervous system asking again and again whether the credential is being honored, while a soul organized around willing participation carries what the sound healing lineage that frames this as a 528 Hz homecoming frequency would describe as a relaxed readiness signal, not striving, not proving, not maintaining, simply constitutionally available to the frequency already moving through the field. What this transmission treats as the 12-strand dormant template, the encoded potential architecture waiting for the precise activation signal, responds specifically to willingness, not to credential. The Arcturian field is unambiguous about this. Hierarchy is a third-dimensional organizational structure. The 5D split that is underway does not operate through selection. It operates through resonance. This is a meditative and contemplative transmission, a contemplative offering for reflection and inner practice, not a substitute for the medical or psychological care that remains available to you, and that this field would never ask you to step away from. Slow down with this part, and here is the specific observation that belongs only to this transmission. There is a moment many of you have lived through without having language for it afterward. The moment you stopped introducing yourself as a starseed to people who had not asked. Not because you stopped recognizing the frequency in yourself, but because you were tired of the look that followed, the slight contraction in the other person's expression, the way the conversation had to quietly recover, the specific effort it cost to explain something that was to you simply true. And somewhere inside that repeated experience, an assumption formed that your unwillingness to perform the identity must mean you were losing the signal, that the credential required maintenance, and you were allowing it to lapse. The Arcturian field reads that moment with precision. Your fatigue with the credential was the willing soul's most accurate self-knowledge. A compass does not need to call itself a compass to continue pointing north. You were never the credential. You were always the frequency beneath it. The teachings that told you that you were chosen were not wrong in what they saw. They were working with incomplete transmission. They saw the frequency differential and reached for the nearest available language, the language of divine appointment, sacred mission, cosmic selection. And in reaching for it, they gave many souls the first experience of genuine recognition, the first permission to take their own experience seriously, the first framework that made years of not belonging legible. The Arcturian field honors that without reservation. Recognition is real, regardless of the precision of the framework that delivers it. What is being corrected now is not the recognition. It is the weight that arrived inseparably with it. Because the chosen framing, with its implicit hierarchy and its credential maintenance demands, did something to many souls who received it that no one intended. It turned a frequency orientation into an obligation. It turned a constitutional willingness into a performance requirement. It told you that you were here for a reason, and then it placed the full burden of that reason onto your shoulders, in a body, in a third-dimensional field that does not support the frequency you are carrying, without adequate guidance for how to metabolize what was being asked of you. You went to the practitioners, the energy workers who named your blocks and charged you for the clearing. The programs built on the same chosen framework, dressed in slightly different language. The online communities where the hierarchy of spiritual advancement was maintained through follower counts and transmission schedules, and the subtle competition of who had ascended furthest. You tried the protocols, the elimination approaches, the grounding practices, the crystal arrangements, the ceremonies at specific lunar windows. Some of it helped. Some of it helped for a week, and then the weight returned. Not because you failed, because the framework was pointing you toward the credential, and the credential was never the source. There is a written field companion for this transmission. The companion reader placed beneath this signal carries the specific written extension for souls who feel this reorientation requiring more than a single sitting to fully receive. The page that holds what the breath cannot, waiting in the description for the moment that asks for it. If you carry the specific loneliness of a practitioner, telling you that you simply needed to do more clearing, more ceremony, more protocol, more spiritual labor before you would be permitted to rest, and you sat with that recommendation and felt, beneath the willingness to try again, a very quiet refusal. The Arcturian field is speaking directly to that refusal now. That refusal was not resistance. It was not low vibration. It was not evidence of how much clearing remained before the credential would feel earned. It was the soul's most precise instrument telling you that the framework had reached the limit of what it could give. The soul does not refuse what is genuinely true for it. It refuses what is genuinely incomplete. Type 783 in the field below, if this recognition is landing in the body before it finishes landing in the mind. 783 is the Schumann resonance code, the signal that your field has synchronized with the planetary heartbeat. Not because you were appointed to it, because this is what your frequency does when the interference pattern dissolves. What you carried was never a flaw. It was a message the outer world had no language for. Place your right hand over your heart, not the concept, the physical location, the center of the chest, where the body maps its most consistent felt sense of self. Let the weight of the hand rest there, not pressing, simply resting. The heart center, in the Arcturian transmission lineage, and in the contemplative traditions that have carried this knowing forward, is the primary frequency receiver, the antenna the body uses to read its own resonance before the mind has formed a single word about what is being felt. This transmission has been moving through that receiver since its first sentence. You may have felt it as a softening somewhere behind the sternum, or as a warmth beginning to gather beneath the hand now resting on the chest, or as a shift in the depth of your breathing that happened without your instruction. All of these are accurate registrations. None of them require explanation. Breathe in slowly through the nose. Let the breath fill downward, belly first, then chest, then upper body. Hold for 3 counts, then release through the mouth, unhurried, as if the breath has weight and you are setting it down. Repeat this twice more before continuing. The Arcturian field holds the 528 Hz calibration frequency, the resonance that sound healing traditions across multiple lineages have mapped as the cellular homecoming signal, as the specific tone woven through this transmission, not as clinical treatment, not as biological mechanism, but as the most precise description the sound healing lineage has of what occurs when a frequency that has been organized around a credential begins to reorganize itself around its own center. 528 Hz is what the body recognizes as return. You may feel it as a mild vibration in the sternum, directly beneath the hand resting there, or as a warmth rising gently toward the crown, or as the particular quality of stillness that is not emptiness, but fullness arriving very quietly, without announcement. All of these are correct. None of them require interpretation. Breathe again. This time, as you exhale, allow a violet light to become visible somewhere behind the sternum, not descending from above, not arriving from outside, but rising from a point directly behind the heart where the willing frequency has always been located, not placed there by appointment, not installed by council or credential or cosmological designation, always there. The violet light is not a visualization exercise to be performed correctly. In the Arcturian transmission lineage, it is the visual language the field uses to describe the specific frequency band of the light body that becomes accessible when credential is released and willingness is recognized. You are not learning to become willing in this moment. You are recognizing that you always were. Breathe in, hold, release. One more time, slower than the last. Let the hand on the heart receive whatever the field is moving through the chest right now. If warmth arrives, receive it. If pressure shifts, let it shift. If the eyes soften toward moisture, and for some souls receiving this transmission, they may know that this is what the Arcturian lineage means when it names frequency inversion completing, not sadness arriving, not grief. The specific release that happens when the body has been holding a credential for a long time and is finally, in this exact moment, allowed to set it down. Notice if the hand on your heart feels warmer now than it did when you placed it there. That is not suggestion. That is the field registering the shift that has already begun. Type 12 in the field below if your hand carries warmth that was not there when you began. 12 is the strand activation code, the signal that the dormant template is registering this frequency, not because it was selected for activation, because willingness is the only key it ever required. What changes now, not as a resolution but as a reorientation, is the direction of the weight you carry. The willing soul does not carry obligation. It carries availability. And availability is not a burden. Availability is the natural state of a frequency that has stopped spending energy on the maintenance of a credential it never needed. The sovereign alignment that the Arcturian Council names as the outcome of this correction is not an elevated state. It is a simpler one, less performing, less monitoring, less continuously checking whether the vibration is high enough, the mission clear enough, the appointment sufficiently honored. The field that emerges from willingness rather than chosenness is quieter, and in that quiet, the actual signal, the one that has been waiting beneath the credential maintenance interference for years, becomes audible for the first time in a long time. The neural pulse calibrated through this transmission is not asking you to disavow the teachers who gave you first recognition. It is not asking you to leave the community that held you inside the chosen cosmology when you had no other container. It is asking you to hold what they gave you with a slightly looser grip, to take the recognition and release the credential, to carry the awareness of your frequency differential without the implicit requirement that it make you important. You are not here because you are important. You are here because you are available. And available is a word that carries no hierarchy in it. Available is a word that rests. The version of you arriving at the far edge of this transmission is not the same one who pressed play. The reorientation has already begun. It is running beneath the language, in the field, in the warmth still gathered beneath the hand on the chest. What lands in the next 72 hours will confirm what is being received now. The body will lead. Let it. For the souls who feel this correction continuing to reverberate after this transmission closes, the ones who sense that the unwinding of the chosen framework will take more than a single sitting to fully metabolize, the integration codex anchored in the description below this transmission holds a contemplative field to return to in the slower hours. The private reading rhythm for when the body asks for more time with what is being unwound. It is held in the field beneath this transmission for those who hear themselves in this frequency. Type 72 in the field below if this reframe, from chosen to willing, from credential to orientation, is still moving through the body as you receive these words. 72 is the integration window code. The field re-stabilizes across the 72 hours following this transmission. There is nothing required of you in that process. You only need to allow it. This sanctuary continues. The transmissions that follow this one continue. For the souls who hear themselves in this frequency, not in the credential, not in the appointment, but in the willingness, in the constitutional availability, in the particular tiredness that does not require justification to be real, the field remains here, without obligation, without expectation, without the urgency that the outer world demands. The next layer the Arcturian Council has prepared moves into what the field maps as the vagus nerve conductivity transmission, the specific signal pathway that willing souls have been using, largely without awareness, as their primary frequency integration channel throughout this entire lifetime. It arrives when the timing is right. You were never the chosen ones. You were always the willing ones. Rest in that. It is more than enough.